Record. So we now should be recording and we now should be in full slide mode. Great. Everybody hear me okay and everyone see those slides okay? Yeah, all good. Thank you very much, Sylvia. I am not in my usual environment. I'm on a client's premises here this evening because we got held on a little bit late, having great debates about transformation and planning for such things. So all good. So bear with me. If I don't have my usual dual screen, but hopefully we can navigate things well. Okay, yes, all good. So I'm recording as we say, and welcome back. I'm not sure if you got caught in the traffic. It did die down over the last couple of days. I haven't had a chance to look out at the papers or any media this evening, but there was some talk of the protesters were going to be back out again this evening. But hopefully you're all home safe and sound. Busloads, I believe, were travelling to Dublin city centre for further protests. But that's not really the idea of the slide, which I'm sure will drive you a little bit nuts. So I'll stop the blinking. And it's more to say we are green to go, of course, this evening, but we're heading near the end of our journey. We are on our second last evening session. Just let Jack in there. And this evening, we are going to cover hardware and software. We're going to do a little bit of a zone in on technology. And then on the 25th, which is a week and a half away, we'll come together again for a Saturday session on the human aspect when we'll talk about culture. And then we will close out our time together, which has gone incredibly quickly on the 5th of May. We'll just have a look at risk and the risk aspect. So we've left the 7 core capabilities behind. We are on the first of the final 3 platforms, almost wraparounds, which is going to be technology, hardware and software, then it'll be people and culture, and then it'll be risk because they pertain to each one of the 7 in the core. Again, I'm working through your assignments. Submissions are really good. And let's spend a little bit of time this evening on the on assignment 2. So I'll loop back around again on that this evening. We did cover that on Saturday, just gone. Hopefully I helped with some of the questions. You've no doubt reflected on it since. And what I'll do this evening is make sure we have some time to get into that as well. So I'm just going to do a little bit of rolling reportage. Just wanted to bring one theme to your attention. Then I'll get into some content around technology and software, and then we'll touch in on assignment 2. So that's the plan for this evening. We will get you gone before 8:30 or by 8:30 if that still works for you. And thank you for joining, and thank you for all the questions. And a number of you have been in touch offline. Always happy to take your thoughts. Always happy to field any questions or guide as you see fit, whether that's in and on program on the work we're doing together here, or if you're something more broad. And some of you have reached out. Always happy to connect. So hope you're all good. Well, shall we keep moving? Everybody doing okay? Yeah. Okay, we'll jump in as yeah, great, thank you. Jump in as ever. One might seem a bit spurious, but one of the big themes I've certainly been looking at for the last 10 years, more, in fact, is this area of digital identity. And one of the unfortunate truths of the world, and it's increasingly becoming more frictionful, is the degree of and the kind of the spectrum of passwords. I don't know if you are feeling this. The lovely Sonia, my lovely wife, said to me at the weekend, if I have to remember another password, I think I'm going to eat my hands. She was like, incredibly frustrated because she just couldn't get on a system. And if we stand back from things, we've been living and enjoying the internet for the last 40 years. I mean, we've been in web world for that period of time. And the one only thing that the web people got wrong was not having a single central secure identifier. It is now reckoned that the average Joe like Garvin has somewhere north of 100 passwords now to remember these days. And that might seem like a lot for those of you who use Apple. You should just use your Apple password app, have a look in there and scroll down through it. I did recently and I did pass 100 and I went, it's true, and it's only getting worse because the more I get, the more I want, but the more protection needs to be in place. So one of the things that the world is trying to figure out is how to unlock digital identity. And I'm just going to leave this paper with you. It's from the World Economic Forum. And it's I kind of I think it's a third iteration of papers that have been written on the importance, the options, and the opportunities of unlocking digital identity. I was involved in this paper. I sat on the WEF Digital Identity Advisory Council because I was involved back in my own days when I was in banking and in Danske. Gosh, when was that? It's 15 years ago. I remember observing the Nordic markets that had what they called single identifiers. So, simple social systems such as the equivalent of your PPS number was the same as your banking ID number. And they haven't, I mean, the Nordics are quite well advanced in this space. But back then, as I say, 15 odd more years ago, they started this idea of kind of creating a single identifier that people will be able to use across digital boundaries. And why is that important? Well, I think it's important to make the digital economy easier to access, remove friction. I think also to strengthen security. And I'm also very aware of the digital divide. And I think lots of people kind of get barred from accessing all the beauty and the prowess of the digital economy because they're not always able to navigate it in a safe way. So there is definitely, I believe, a burning platform for the world, and we're starting to see the first good movements of it now. The EU Digital Identity Initiative, and I think actually COVID, if you all remember the COVID app that we all were able to start tracking our kind of our footprints and the risk of infections. That actually was a turning point in the idea of us all being able to have some kind of central mechanism to channel in a safe way knowledge across boundaries. Since then, we've seen a number of developments and we are going to see an acceleration now. And I think over the next couple of years, we will perhaps see digital identity being unlocked. I mean, again, there's a couple of reports from the World Economic Forum. If you're interested, go and have a look. And if you're interested in kind of just thinking about this, the importance of the burning platform, and then how digital identity is and how potentially we'll move from this idea of, everything being centralized to maybe more of a federated model. And ultimately, the direction of travel will be more to a decentralized model. And really what a decentralized model means is, my credentials for accessing my digital self, my own digital world, won't necessarily sit in single passwords and credentials, validation networks in each one of the worlds that I go and try and access. Nor will it be sign me up with Google, but it'll actually move to my credentials will be my own. They'll sit within my own crypto protected environment, probably on my phone or certainly in my own digital sphere, and they'll become my keys. And then the world will have to enable me to open my world with my keys. Simplest way I can describe it. So the world is kind of on this kind of acceleration now, and certainly the EU is starting to move towards a single, a digital identity tokenization system, where I think we will see some of that friction removed, but we'll actually see new business models building up in itself around digital identity. Ireland doesn't really have any of these, but if you go to Sweden, you go to Luxembourg, you go to many of the European countries, Germany has it, and it will start to look and feel like if I want to go and book a hotel and I want to go and get into that hotel, instead of having to pass my passport over, what I will do is I will pre-book with my digital identity. I will unlock my credentials because it's on my terms, and it'll make for much more frictionless consumption of service, much safer consumption of services. But actually, the whole idea and the premise behind decentralization is it will also give us control over our credentials, access to our information, and indeed control over our information ourselves. And there's a big movement, as we know in this world, to do that, because much of our data and much of the insight and information about us doesn't sit in our world and our domains. It sits in the honeypots of the technology giants. So one to watch. And I just thought I'd bring that little slightly more serious, hopefully not too spurious topic to your attention. And maybe if you do get an opportunity, it's worth a little flick through some of those WEF reports, because I think they do nail the problem, the options and the opportunities, and also some of the risks in good degree as well. And sharing with you, because obviously we're on a digital transformation program, and this is one of the, as I say, one of the few components of the digital age that just didn't get formed correctly, not for any mal reason, but purely because of lack of foresight, because it has moved faster than any of us could have known. So anyway, I'll pause there. I'll stop there, in fact, and leave that with you to consume if you should consume. But I just thought I'd give you those headline thoughts. One to watch. So I'll leave that with you. Right, I want to do a little recap from the weekend. We touched in on assignment one. Hopefully you enjoyed your little bit of speed dating. We didn't really get a chance to share back in the plenary because James joined us a little bit earlier, James Lutet, and I thought he had a very good session with us. Hope you enjoyed the discussion with James. Love the way he just kind of, talks practical and brings things down to earth. He's always delighted for people to connect with them. So do feel free to do that. Hopefully you enjoyed the kind of transition that we did from kind of micro change into macro change, because I think, James was talking to us about, the practical tactics of trying to get SH1T done on the day-to-day basis. But we brought it up to a higher level. We looked at how to unlock success in digital transformations, that kind of long-standing, really valuable report from McKinsey. And we got into then this whole idea of achieving vitality in turbulent times. They were just the success factors on the McKinsey survey, which, time has proven for them still to be valid. So the importance of leadership, why we're doing this program, I would imagine, why we're doing this module is around building capabilities for the workforce of the future and empowering people in new ways and giving them, day-to-day tools to help us be digital on the inside so we can be digital on the outside. And then the importance of narrative and communication, because embracing the new, whether it's digital or in the next era now of intelligence, is a leap, a necessary one to if the power is to be harnessed. But definitely, the bigger the change, the more the change management. And first principle, prime directive, is to bring people on the journey, help them navigate change, because everyone loves to innovate. Nobody really loves to change. if you've heard that old adage. So that criticality of communications is for me is prime. We started to look in. We looked at some McKinsey stuff around, well, how do we set ourselves and our organizations up to develop, build capabilities for and execute digital strategies. Well, it usually takes not just one thing, not just two things, but many things. And the more frequent you do them, and the more you push those forward as a front together, the more successful indeed you can be. So again, this was linked from a McKinsey study that just shows the importance of frequency and the combination of doing things together. I don't need to read out everything that's on the slide. Hopefully, you're getting just a general sense that uh, being successful and moving up the curve to be to get your probabilities away from this kind of old record that only 30% of transformations have been successful, up to this idea of maximizing the probability and reducing the risk of being unsuccessful. So the probability of being successful and the risk of not being successful requires you to do a number of really critical things at the same time. And the previous slide was all about frequently doing it. So this is defining the overarching purpose, embedding digital in the business strategy. It's not a side project over with the ye old digital team in the corner. It's everybody's job to harness digital to empower and propel their strategic ambitions. Leaders have got to be aligned or they rip the whole place up, because we can't have one group head looking east and another group looking west, because in the middle you just tear. And then it's about, with that vision, with that alignment, and that with embedded digital, it's about developing a roadmap of initiatives. A lot of those initiatives can be capability building while executing. So in many ways, digital is about, building the plane while you're flying at, 40,000 feet, because such is the need of pace and demand in the market. And because much of this is new for us, we've kind of got to build the skills and execute the initiatives all at the same time. And that can be difficult. And what's really important, I think, is the middle lower block is about making sure that in transformation you don't lose the necessary focus to add value and deliver value. So for me, digital should always be an endeavor in value creation or value defense, not cosmetic. And we talked about that idea of cosmetic digital for the sake of things when James talked to us on Saturday. For me, hopefully for you, you'll know that prioritization of clear use cases on that roadmap that can deliver value, where there's also accountability from business owners. Well, that's critical. And then the bottom right is ensure there's a clear tech and a data strategy, and some of that we're going to touch into this evening. But before we do that, again, just going to mention to you, there's this idea of being ambidextrous, so that organizations who focus on the vitality of their themselves, their organization, their businesses, and who sorry, I'm skipping around slides. Let me go back and frame it that if you remember, I was on the weekend, I was talking about explore and exploit. So this idea of being able to continuously improve the business that you're in today, to release capacity to invest in the business for tomorrow, but also to keep pace with the constantly changing expectations of the market, what it needs and what it wants, and also what it needs. Like organizations who focus on that vitality, that ability to sweat today to release capacity for tomorrow, while also improving what you have today, and ultimately what you're building for tomorrow, to be able to ingest that back in, and this flywheel of continuous improvement, that's critical. And that's really just links back to adaptive strategy models. And adaptive strategy is kind of where we look out and we identify what's happening. That's sensing, that strategic sensitivity, then aligning what's happening on the outside, and then equating that into allocating resources on the inside. So that's innovation in many ways. But that can only be released, an organization can only release its capacity to pursue what's potentially new or what's potentially disruptive if it's in this state of constant internal renewal and constant internal continuous improvement. So that whole idea of constant internal improvement in and kind of simplification and capacity release in order to release value for tomorrow. I did share with you, and we spent a little bit of time having some discussions and some fun with, the whole kind of T maps, which was part of helping us to think about assignment 2, and we did that little scenario. And I'm going to revisit that at the end of this evening's session. But I just wanted to walk everybody back through what we covered on Saturday for those of you that weren't with us. And also because if you hear it once, it kind of, it lands. If you hear it a second time, maybe it starts to permeate through. So check in now and see if there's any questions before we get on to a little bit of content on technology this evening. Is that okay with everyone so far? All good. So just a little bit of recap there. And on that last slide, it was the kind of the 5 foundations for execution. So ambidextrous leadership, even though we spent a lot of time on it, it's a critical philosophy, and organizing into these exploit and explore into almost these different horizons. That's a critical almost departure point. But we did talk quite a bit about risk appetites and tolerances and reward and resilience and renewal. So again, please reflect on there are capabilities, there are philosophies, there are models, and there are, I guess, processes that need to be put in place, which is kind of around the edge here, in order to safely navigate an organization through multi-year and multi-speed programs. And we're going to practice that in assignment 2, and I'm going to come back to that later on. But important that we're thinking about when we're managing a program or projects. James talked about the projects. We spent time on ambidexterity and thinking about road mapping, because digital transformation is, again, it's about building that plane at 40,000 feet in full flight, and it's about building capability while trying to execute many new things while trying to release capacity from the old. So that complexity requires an equivalent sophisticated execution prowess. So that's the essence of that. Okay, I'm going to just take a little drink of water, if that's okay. All right, everyone. Okay, so let's zone in on technology for a little while. So often people say, "Oh, geez, we're only getting to technology now." That's on purpose, and not by poor design. Because as any digital leader, CIO, engineer, you will know. I mean, we don't start with the technology. We start with the objective. We start with what's the strategy that we're trying to pursue, and once we do that, then we can start to think about what kind of technologies do we need, how do we need to assemble them, what's the right method of assembling them, and how do we evolve them? Because technology strategy is exactly that. Where are we? Where do we want to go? How are we going to get there? And that's the trilogy of strategy in any shape, make or regard, whether it's the macro enterprise strategy or whether it's the plans. Sometimes we call them strategies for technology, or maybe for customer centricity, or any of the kind of the capabilities that we're looking to build in order to execute. So what I want to do this evening is just share the slides that should all be up on the IOB Learn. Maybe you've had a chance to have a look at them. I'm not going to read them all in detail because they're the slides where I wrote them, so you would have something to take away and read. in these sessions, as you know, I'm just trying to put a talk track with them, so you can hopefully uh, complement what's written with what I'm sharing. Again, just to make this a richer learning experience. And what I'm going to try and do is just talk through a couple of slides on how strategy translates into technology, because again, it's about where we are, where we're going, and how do we get there. So, kind of want to try and touch in on that. And Steve Jobs said, and I think they're just nice words and good words, and there's an important message in them. You got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology, not the other way around. And I think that's my philosophy. So, kind of, visually, I'm just trying to, on this slide, share with you the schema. I mean, that whole idea is, with adaptive strategies, or when we're strategically thinking about, how we want to deploy digital across the 360 of our organization to create value. And I've got the 360 there, so it could be out of the engagement layer. We covered all this in the first module. It could be in the proposition layer and processes in the workplace. But down here, we're obviously talking about technology. It's about understanding what competencies technology needs to empower to create what kind of layer of value in the digital 360 you need to push forward in order for strategy to be achieved. So that's kind of the logic that I'm suggesting on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, once we've kind of thought through what we want to do in terms of experience or simplification or engagement or analytics, etc., the 7 building blocks, once we know how we need to build those capabilities to deliver value for strategy, oftentimes what we do is we call that demand, and then that should then equate over to how do we need technology to deliver to us a set of services that supply the demand. So again, that's the kind of equation that we're trying to come across here. Some of you may be technologists on the call. I'm not sure if you are or aren't. Most of us, or even if we're not practicing technologists, more and more of us, just because it's so much part of our business and our everyday lives, are much more fluent and coherent about thinking and discussing how technology needs to be leveraged as a set of services on the supply side to equate to the demand side. And many of us, will be used to seeing these kind of technology stacks, and that's kind of really the schema that I have on the right-hand side. It's the idea of how would we stack technology components, and with each component releases a set of services. How would we stack those up to kind of generate a complete picture of all the technologies that we need in order to be successful in enabling our capabilities to execute our strategies? And in many ways, the stack maps to the digital 360, because typically out of the very front, you're thinking about channels, so channel technologies. So that would be, of course, apps and web and so on and so forth. And they're typically customer channels, but often we find that we have colleague channels. So this could be our CRM systems that were enabling our sales colleagues to engage with the customers. They're kind of more colleague channels. And indeed, there are outbound partners and platforms more for B2B businesses. But again, lots of banks are, for instance, we've have got finance businesses, and they're integrating their car finance services directly into the car franchise and the car sellers. So Bank of Ireland do this, AIB do it, etc., etc. PTSB do it as well. It's a really, dynamic market. So the point being that when you're thinking about technologies, it can be front of house technologies to enable colleagues to engage the market, customers to engage directly with us from the market, or the opportunity for channel technologies. In behind that, you typically then have a layer of marketing, communications, and content. So that can be CRM systems, etc. And that's to enable the collection of data and then the push of content. So very much two-way orchestration through the channels out into the marketplace. Typically behind that, I touched on digital identity earlier. There's security, and there's basic functionality, enabling people to do the basic things and orchestrate what they want to do in their services. Again, that can be CRM systems, that may be bespoke workflow systems that an organization might have. And in behind that sits, typically the data layer, or I'd call it the analytics layer there. And that's where we collect all the data sitting above us. And obviously, you now have understood that I'm working from the market back in, working down the layers here. So typically you'll have data platforms, big data, and then you'll have insight engines, which, extract from the data. Again, CRMs do a lot of this now. So often what you'll find is single technologies now facilitate a lot of these, or single technology estates or platforms enable a number of these layers. So we collect the data, generates insights and enables us with analytics products and reporting. And an analytics product, a large language model could sit in there and could enable us, for instance, as an agent, to be able to plug right back up into our customer channel or even into our colleague channel, to solve for queries, for instance, around simulation of early debt paydown, or just even for content orchestration, or knowledge orchestration, to help customers to answer questions that they may well have. In behind that tends to be product systems, finance systems, HR reporting systems like enterprise, what they call ERPs, or enterprise systems, which is kind of managing the internal services of the organization. And of course, all that needs to sit on some sort of infrastructure, and that's where you have your hardware. So that may be service within your business, it may be in the cloud. A lot of the time it's in hybrid. So it's in some servers that are, your own data services that you control yourself, or that you're renting from a cloud provider. And obviously you've got your core kind of operating software and your security as well. So dwelled a little bit on that slide, but important. And forgive me for anybody who knows it all already, but for those who don't, important that we kind of just have this idea that when we're thinking about technologies, we are thinking about components that deliver services to achieve different, to do different jobs for us at different layers in the organization, for the organization, or ultimately for us to engage with our market. And in this slide is more of a takeaway slide of just kind of giving you maybe a double click on what the jobs are that some of those services might be trying to do with each one of those layers. So for instance, as I said, channels, it could be web or mobile. In behind that, there might be a separate technology for personalizing content out through web or mobile. And in behind that, there may well be a consents platform, so that when we are messaging people and we're giving them access back into our environments, that we're collecting their identities and making sure we give them safe passage back in. And then in behind that, we tend to have data storage, we tend to have reporting, we tend then to have business intelligence, and indeed predictive and prescriptive and automated services, those kind of bots and things that I talked about. And right back in behind that, then you tend to have where the products are booked, where the balance sheet is managed for finance, or as I say, your people systems, your HR systems. And underneath that, then you've got your hardware, it could be your servers, your storage, your cloud, but ultimately the management of your environments, and very importantly, the management of data and cyber, which of course is as a core underpin. What I haven't mentioned so far is the kind of the layer across the bottom, which is often we find that organizations are building their own technology stacks with their own services, like we see on the left. But we have seen, and it's not a new thing, been around for a long time, maybe as long as modern technologies have been, with this idea of APIs or application program interfaces, which are essentially connectors between your technology in the inside and external technologies outside of your immediate control that you may wish to connect to either send your services to, or you want to ingest services from. There's another slide on that. We can touch on that a little bit later. So I can't see you now at this stage, folks, because as I say, I'm not on my own screen. Everybody doing okay? Just do a little check-in. Everyone all right? Any questions I can answer? I can see you now, so I'm getting thumbs up and all good. Right, okay. If there's anything at all, just pop in. As I say, I'm not at my usual office. I'm in a client office, so I'm on a single screen, and I'm just going to keep going until you tell me otherwise. Right. So how I have approached this in the past, and I think, good best practice is that, again, let's anchor on this idea that it's not technology for technology's sake. What we need to do is figure out what we want technology to do for us, and then figure out what technologies we need to do that job for us. So it's a little bit like the customer-centric philosophy that we have. Let's start with the jobs to be done. And often what we do is, on the left-hand side, we say, what are the jobs that technology needs to do for us? Now, we could do it at a very headline level. You could get it right down to a customer journey. And typically we would do that when we're building propositions. We kind of build out the customer journey. How do we want to make customer aware? How do we want them to apply? How do we want to onboard them? How do we want to track goals with them? How do we want to make sure that we add value through the journey, value management, all the things you can see on the left-hand side. And typically what we do is we'll set out, now that could be a macro journey, that journey could apply to actually any experience. So you might have a macro, or you might have a micro journey, and a micro journey might be, we want to help people save or put money away to get married, right? So you might make it as specific as that, or you might make it as general as this, both work. And the idea of what we do then is we try and start to articulate what are the things or the jobs that need to be done throughout that journey. And then we try and identify what technologies we need at each step in the journey to do the micro job to add up to the overall experience. And then once we have a perspective on that, oftentimes what we do, which is on the right-hand side, we kind of evaluate to what degree we are fit or not fit in terms of being able to do that. And in many ways, this is probably a core slide for doing maybe your assessment or your assignment, in terms of having a think about for you in your strategy, how you want technology to deliver, an experience to clients. Because if your strategy is focused on experience to clients, this would be a nice slide to use to say, that's the journey on the left-hand side. These are the technologies we might need in the middle. And here's an evaluation of how we are fit or not fit, or we are today, which probably leads you then to, as you'll imagine, an assessment of where you have gaps. How do you close those gaps, which may require technology upgrade, technology insourcing, or license purchase, or whatever it is that you're going to do to get your hands on that technology, but to then be able to integrate it. Now, I have seen a lot, and I'm sure you have seen lots of people turning up at the doors of professionals and organizations with technology to sell. And just the caution is be aware that really don't, mind be, I'm always very mindful of, often, starting with the technology can be like going around with a solution, looking for problems to solve. And because every technology will have a great story to tell. Often we use diagnostics and services such as the likes of Gartner and so on and so forth, Forrester, and there are many others that are out there that help us to see the wood from the trees from the full plethora of technology solutions that are out there. And there's just a prodigious amount of them. I mean, this is in 2020. It's a slide just to kind of give you an idea of just for the marketeers alone, hundreds of different products or sorry, software solutions that are out there to get the job of marketing done. And the likes of the Gartners and the Foresters can be very, very helpful. And we've got to pay to get access to their magic knowledge, but they do have it. And they have really robust evaluations of side-by-side analysis of what different technologies do. So we always recommend that once you understand the job to be done, once you don't start with the solution and try and figure out the problems, you don't start with the software. You start with the problem to be done. Then you must evaluate the software, and the likes of Gartner, Forrester, etc., can be very helpful in terms of you narrowing the field, because there is such choice out there in the marketplace, as I'm sure
Garvin,
you've all.
can I just say, this is where
Yeah.
my cynic comes out. I'm sorry
Okay.
now, because I
Please.
work with loads of clients in pretty much every industry, and I've worked for many big organizations
Yeah.
myself, and I I find that what you've just knocked out most companies I've worked at right there in one blow, because like I find it is the approach they take. Start with a products or whatever it is, and not the client or the customer, and they put a narrative around that. And to me, and the reason I'm saying it is not to be cynical, to me that is one of the biggest challenges to this type of internal transformation that we're so desperately trying to champion with doing this degree, for instance, and whatever, trying to make change happen. Often the expression used to, I suppose, put an obstacle in front of it is, well, what's the ROI?
Yeah.
Or what's in it for us? And if the what's in it for us, the answer to that question isn't dollars or euro symbols, it's, well, to hell with that idea. And to me, and again, it's maybe put out for a later response, but that's something that I struggle with as a person, as a businessman, and indeed doing stuff that we're doing here now. Sorry, I just had to get out there.
Oh, it's good. It struck a chord. I think Bob is it. Forgive me. I can't, as I say, I can't see everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Bob, great. So just to connect with you on this, and maybe others are interested in participating and jumping in as well. Are you saying you've found that, a lot of the discourse happens the inverse way to how it should, i.e., here's a wonderful technology, you can do this, and then we end up kind of figuring out how to implement it without really doing the full value assessment? Are you saying?
100% I'm
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 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 absolutely. That's why I have this slide, because I have found that for decades now. I continue to observe it, not universally, right? But I'm throwing out that caution. Um, and why am I throwing out that caution? For two reasons. One is I've seen both enterprise and shadow ITs emerge from people, beholden with the idea and the sell and the pitch, and I mean, seen a state sprawl, as we call it, which is, just technologies which are starting to be integrated, which may not be safe and secure and may not be, enduring, cost more than they should. So I'm a believer. You start with the problem to be solved, not the solution. And we'll move on to it in a second. There are principles then of integration and technology estate management that need to be really carefully adhered to. There's a real discipline required. Alternatively, what people can often be left with is just complexity and dissatisfaction and poor ROI. But that's been my experience, Bob. Sounds like it's resonating a bit with you. Now, Gary, I think you have your hands up. How are you?
Hi, Garvin. Hi, Rob. Yeah, I was going to say, I I'd have a fair bit of sympathy for Rob's position, but I'd also appreciate what you're presenting, Garvin, in that what you're saying is this is what you should do. And I agree with that. I also agree with Rob that the challenge I suppose a lot of people would have, particularly people coming on these courses, we probably wouldn't have sufficient influence in the organizations we represent to be able to necessarily get that view across. And so I have a phrase that I use, which it could be accused of being slightly cynical as well, but I always say when it comes to the financial services industry, banks and insurance companies want cutting edge technology that's been around for the last 30 years and already being used by thousands of competitors. And that's your basic problem with them, and it's very easy sometimes. And I've had personal professional experience of it, of they buy the front end, so somebody comes up with a new app which has all the bells and whistles. You can look up your stuff online, you can transact online, you can get reports online, dum dum dum, and then you find out that, well, the only thing it does is a call deposit account or something like that, or a really simple insurance product, and you can't get them to see past the flashy front end and recognize how much work has to be done in order to get that front end to actually deliver the same core suite of products and
Yeah.
services that are the fundamentals of the financial services industry. So I actually fully agree with the way you're presenting it. It should be that you should be looking at what is it we're trying to achieve, and then what do we need to build to achieve it. But a lot of organizations think they can shortcut, fast track it by, oh, well, one of our competitors has bought such and such, so we'll buy the same thing and just do it
Right.
better, quicker. You
Yeah.
know, I'll stop
Uh,
there.
yeah, no, no, thank you. Brilliant input, Bob, and brilliant input, Gary, and thanks. And good to trash these things around. I mean, I had, and it's it's interesting that it's by entire chance that in the Magic Quadrant there, Adobe. I mean, I had a marketeer, a CMO, who persisted for 2 years on implementing Adobe. Purely because of, they went to the Adobe conference every year, and they drank the Kool-Aid, and we ended up spending seven figures on an Adobe implementation that was never used once, because we just didn't think it through holistically end to end. I lost that one, unfortunately, but these are the lessons you learn along the way. And it wasn't that the intention was wrong, by the business leader, not at all. And it's not either saying that what Adobe was saying it could do was wrong, not at all. Um, unless things are assessed uh, holistically and objectively, and the ROI lens really put on it, but also the feasibility lens really put on it. I mean, technology is useless unless you can integrate it and flow data through it, and unless you can really stitch it into your workflows and so on and so forth. All kind of very logical stuff. Um, so the caution is just don't be maybe don't be flattered by what's on the wrapper. Get in and eat the bar, and understand it and ingest it and digest it and do all the rest before maybe making decisions. But we probably spent a bit longer on that one. But great interjections, Bob and Gary. Bob, hope that's okay. We hopefully we've yeah. Okay, thanks, Bob. Just
Percent,
looking at
yeah,
your, yeah, yeah,
100%.
yeah, 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 cool. I'm just looking at your messages as we go along as well. Okay, let me keep going. So I think it's kind of leading on to for me, certainly, and this won't be like fully comprehensive again for you, technology architects that are out there and technology strategists and so on, but this is my assimilation from experience about thinking about, the right set of criteria and the right kind of almost having the right philosophy and the right focus. So philosophy is on the left, focus on the right. Um, and again, it's you can read through it if you haven't already. But the headlines are like when we're thinking through How do we utilize a set of services that the technology promises within a comprehensive and often complex stack of technologies and services that we ultimately need to stitch together? Doing that in a thoughtful way is more, it's becoming more and more important because there are more and more potential technologies, and technology is becoming more important, and we need to be able to ensure as we kind of knit our technologies together that we're not slowing down the potential rate of progress. In fact, the opposite. We need to be very thoughtful about, as we assemble and integrate our technologies together, how can we enable our technologies to move at the pace that we want to in the business and ultimately for the customer? Because again, back to the point, it all starts with the customer and then facilitating the business to be able to deliver a set of services to the customer. So typically the principles on the left are them kind of the headline principles. So, when we're putting these kind of architectures of technologies together and connecting their services, and I know we use this term APIs, this idea we use APIs to connect external services. You use APIs to connect the internal technologies together so that we can kind of set out end-to-end workflows where data and the job that a customer wants to do passes from one technology component to the next technology component down through the stack. And in order to make that efficient but also reusable, the modern technology philosophy is to kind of compartmentalize and connect different technologies in order to containerize things. And the reason why you might containerize things is there might be a service in one technology that you might want to redeploy in multiple places. So again, that idea of maybe personalized content, if you're taking that stack I was talking about earlier, to personalize content to Garvin or to Gary or to Bob or to Anastasia, to any of us, we might want to be able to personalize when we come in on the web. We might want to personalize when we come in on the app, because the app may not be a web form factor. It might be an independent, but also we might want to be able to personalize when you're on the phone with us. We might want to be able to personalize when we're sending out our written correspondence to you. So the idea of a personalization, content personalization, being a microservice so that it can be deployed multiple times and reusable multiple times, kind of is at the core of what sits behind this idea of setting up these microservices that are discrete and componentized, and then making sure that they're architected with robust internal API strategy. And the design of APIs is an art in itself. But there are standards, there are smart designs, so that we can connect these services to other services and other endpoints on the inside as well as connect them on the outside. So they have to be able to do both. So it's that idea of componentizing microservices, facilitating internal and external connectivity of those services through a robust API strategy. And then often what I don't find enough of is smart thinking about scalability and elasticity. And that's about just being forecasting and scenarioing to what degree flows and utilization of services will be, and that we're buying the right amount of compute and storage and licenses even, et cetera. So that point about scalability and elasticity is really important, and really important design factor to forecast future flows so that we're not under architecting, and we're not over purchasing, I guess. So that's a really important commercial lens. Being ecosystem ready is ultimately that idea of being thinking about our overall technology strategy. How do we connect that to partnerships and platforms, and enable the whole concept of open, which is the seventh of our core competencies, and then making sure the organization around it has the skills, that you've got the processes, that you've got the tooling, to be able to make change in and with technologies quickly, so that we can keep up with that pace of change on the external world. So you can read the principles in yourself. I'm just giving my talk over to it. And the success factors on the right is, there's got to be that emphasis on experience and value, to the points that we were talking about earlier on. So, we should only be making investments in using the design principles to the left, where, we can see that we're going to improve experience, and where we know that that's going to improve value. It's to make sure that, and we don't see too much of this anymore. I think we're in a much better world now, where, technology and business are working together in a round table mentality. But if you see that, stop it. If you don't see that, if you see polarism, and, demand and supply, just be cautious. Because if people aren't sitting around and everybody understand what's the problem we're trying to solve and what's the solution we need to solve it, that can just lead us to, I guess, decisions that are either slower or not as value adding as they should be. Making sure the risk is understood, and that there's nimble governance. The more we do, the more governance we need. But the faster we want to move, the more nimble the governance needs to empower. So that's an important kind of success factor, because you've got to match appetite with pace. And then, investing in talent and operating model, and really being lean, and links to my scalability and elasticity point, but making sure that as we set up our organizations and as we set up the technology in their organizations, that we don't allow that cost creep, that we manage capacity, both in terms of change resources or in terms of environments and so on, very well. And my experience is there needs to be constant pruning of technology estates, in order to make sure that they fit the capacity required, both so we're not undercooking, but also to make sure that we're not overcooking. API product management is something I've referred on and touched. It kind of links back to the whole idea of how can we make sure that as we establish our technology services, that we can create these application program interfaces, so that we can connect microservices on the inside, and also that we can plug into and deploy our services into external kind of markets, or into external partners, or into platforms as we may require, but also that we can ingest technology and data, technology services and data in from external services that we might require. And again, look, you can read through the slides yourself, but the headlines are, you really approach it the same way as the technology strategy. You understand the job that's trying to be done, the user mapping. Oftentimes, it's really clever. In the same way as we're establishing a technology stack, you create an API marketplace, which is just really understanding what services you have, the quality of documentation, which really, helps people to understand how to connect those services on the inside or from the outside. But really important to put diagnostics and access supports in place, such as sandboxes, which helps people, particularly from the outside, but also on the inside. People can play with services using APIs to alleviate risk and accelerate potential utilization. Working on developer experience, so developers work with APIs. Some companies like Stripe are just got amazing APIs. I mean, this idea of plug and play. By the way, it lets dispel the myth of plug and play. It's there's only one or two services that are out there that really are plug and play. Stripe again will be one of them, but they have built their entire business on production ready plug-in APIs. So you build your web, and it's a job, but it's not a complex job of integration, of testing, of security management, etc., etc. But that's the exception. There's a lot of care and attention required to making sure you can support developers to safely and securely integrate and apply to the standards, or sorry, apply to the principles that I mentioned on the previous slide, such as being able to be reusable and have strong life cycle management. No need to go down. I mean, we're getting down into the trenches now of technology, and we'll come back up a little bit. Gary, sorry, you have your hand up there. Let me check in with you. You okay?
Thanks, Darvin. Yeah, I was going to say I just want to kind of just clarify. When we look at this, so this is and Stripe is probably what is a good example. So when we talk about this, we're building technological componentry, which in effect is our product, because we are now making technological product commercially available, and that's how we make a living. And the licensing model is changing. Most software suppliers are moving from the, big purchase price and then a service fee to, forever paying as you go. Almost like Spotify or whatever. Only you're paying to rent a very big commercial application. And I don't know if you've seen this in the financial services industry, but what I'm seeing is I think the financial services industry want to adopt agile methodologies, etc., but they still aren't really very good at talking about product in this sense.
Yeah.
Internally, right? And so you got the confusion between whatever products are, types of insurance policies or types of loans and deposit products, right? And then they try and adopt this agile concept, and they don't really know how to actually define or understand what a technological product actually is within their domain.
Yeah. So Gary, I would agree. I've certainly observed that. Maybe more in the Irish environment, as we move internationally, to maybe some more sophisticated markets in the UK to a degree. Open banking was moving to open finance. Not anywhere near its full utilization and potential. But as I think of fintechs, Gary, and Stripe is a fintech, right? And Finergo, and fantastic Irish company, and so on and so forth. Like, they think of their services as a product, because I think that's what you're articulating. So yeah, and in almost in the way that we're espousing in this program, that you start with the customer and you work back to architecting experience. And that's maybe journey management, but experience is the product that we might think of as we think about going to market. Fintechs often, particularly fintechs that aren't necessarily going to market, but they might be enabling organizations to go to market, such as a Stripe. They think about their experience is the ability to harness the services that their technology can provide, and that's what they call a product. That's how I think about it, Gary. I'm not sure if that's making sense, or if we're
it does. It does. It makes a lot of sense. And like, in terms of what you're saying earlier about, understand what you're trying to solve for, and then start thinking about how you're going to solve it, as opposed to, buying a technology and thinking that just by adopting a technology, you're suddenly going to transform your business.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's the service that the technology is providing, and it's the ease and the safety of integrating it. I mean, if you're, we're oversimplifying. I'm sure we are, but I think it's a nice track to help us to think on. Thank you, Gary.
Well, thank you.
Okay, not at all. Thank you. I'll keep going. In the same way that we have, I just want to touch on this one. It's important because I'm kind of just going to blow out or explode our data, that kind of, data and analytics layer, um, because of the importance, and because of, at the end of the day, any technology is useless unless there's data flowing through it. But in many ways, we've got to a point in the world where unless we're using our technologies to capture the data, and then from that data, we're leveraging the potential of the more progressive AI technologies that are out there. And of course, we looked at these before, whether it's, simple BI or machine learning, deep learning, language models, etc., etc. But all of that requires um, data stacks in themselves. And more, we're seeing technologists and organizations within the technology stack getting smarter and building out on the same kind of principles with the same kind of success factors. The data stack, or the data and AI stack, or the data and analytics stack, they're just different terms to do the same thing. Again, I'm not going to dive into this in detail, but it's the whole idea that that data services that we now see we're integrating and ingesting, they need their own bespoke infrastructure. They definitely need a lot of security and protection. And they need to be able to ingest data from source systems and data streams, need to be able to process those, store them for use in data products, which is data analytic services, etc., and ultimately to be able to serve up value through data analytics or AI utilization out of the front end. But instead of getting caught in the detail, just think about this whole idea of organizations need to, more and more now, because of the potential, the prowess, the threat, and the opportunity of AI, they need to have a really robust data analytics stack and maturity model, so that they can ingest, harness, and safely store data, but then leverage it out through AI products. And what's an AI product? A bot, a knowledge bot is an AI product. Personalization engine, which knows the difference between Gary and Garvin, and knows our history, knows our preferences, and knows when we land on the app that it's Gary or Garvin. They're the kind of service that I'm talking about. They're beyond the kind of basic business intelligence, which is the business or the channel manager knowing that Garvin annoyed us 20 times last year, and Gary only came in 3 times, but Gary's worth 3 times Garvin, etc., etc. That's basic business intelligence. But we covered a fair degree of that in our data analytics maturity model. The importance of data technology stacks is becoming more and more important. Right, conscious of time, I'm going to just point you through a couple of last pieces. This is a heavy reading slide. It links to some of the pre-reading that I shared with you as well. And I would say to go and have a look at it and maybe read it, and hopefully it'll be a useful reference, because lots of organizations have lots of legacy technologies. Much of it may be hosted on premise, which means in servers in their own businesses that maybe don't have the agility or the security, and are costly, that maybe cloud services could provide. But more and more, the more technology becomes a dependency. And because lots of technology in banks is 20, 30, 40 years, maybe even heading on for 50 years old now, and it's written in old languages, etc., it can be a real challenge. So what organizations find that they have to do in their technology strategies is be ambitious with understanding the job that technology can do and what are the technologies that it requires. But Sophie's choice is all about, many organizations are handcuffed with old technologies, particularly big enterprise product systems, We'll all have heard the term, untangling the spaghetti, and that's because there's just been this sprawling, maybe just not as neatly organized because maybe the technology's old or maybe just the strategy wasn't as fluent as it could be. So organizations have to navigate how to box in and minimize old technologies and the anchor that they can hold and get them working side by side with newer technologies, and ultimately over time manage a transition. And that's what navigating coexistence is all about. So I'm just going to leave it at that as a headline. That's a big conundrum for many organizations, particularly financial services, but I work in many sectors, and it's a challenge in pretty much every sector. And in many ways, once your technology is a couple of years old, it's legacy because, it's older, technologies are developing so fast. In many ways, it hasn't been architected in the principles in the right way. So, technology can be an anchor. Managing kind of, coexistence of new with old, but putting it together in such a way as to enable velocity is really important part of the plan. And there's some of the pre-reading. I'm kind of coming to the pre-reading last because it refers that some brain perspectives, and they just talk about Commonwealth Bank of Australia. They've gone on a multi-year journey to modernize their systems. I've been on many a journey. I still am on journeys with organizations to modernize their systems. So modernizing the old, integrating with the new, and being smart in the overall architecting and adhering to those design principles for those value drivers that I've mentioned earlier on is a complex task not to be underestimated. And there's been many a tombstone emblazoned with folks who have tried to navigate that world. So this whole area of modernization really important. And this slide, and again, just a reference back to the Bain material in the pre-reading, just kind of gives some pathways to how modernization can be done. Sometimes it comes from modernizing the front end customer engagement technologies. Sometimes it gets deeper with its experience, engagement, and products. Sometimes people get into just unbundling the core, more the back end systems. Some people kind of just throw it all out and try and start again with a kind of a greenfield model. All are valid. All with their pros and cons. Maybe just important to be aware of the necessity to think about this and the different pathways that can be and pursue. And in many ways, again, bringing it back to the Bain material in the reference, really it has to be value driven. So, this is just a way to have a think about, the different pathways that can be used depending on the different value that you're trying to unlock. So if you're trying to, drive more customer engagement, customer experience, that may lead you down one pathway. Whereas if you've really got, some security concerns in your core technologies, or if you just can't see a way for your old technologies to anyway be integrated with anything in the new, that might lead you down a different way, i.e. core transformation as opposed to customer and front end transformation. So that's really what those pieces are all about. And there's a nice article, I think, included in the pre-read, just in terms of as a CEO or a transformation leader, having a think about modernizing your technology or being on a path of continuous modernization. Just kind of the smart 10 questions that one should ask oneself. And there's a lot about the role that technology plays, how you organize around it, and what kind of core philosophy and technology foundations you would put around that, which all link back to the design principles that I'm talking about earlier. So reading for you to take offline. Again, some wasn't in the pre-read, I don't think, but another article, again from McKinsey, good stuff on different options for replacing the core. So if you really want to get down and dirty on core banking transformation, where every SI has been, and many banks have been. Do take your time to have a look at that, but entirely discretionary for you. There's just 2 slides which sit in there on that. There's even 3 slides that sit in there on that. I think I've actually pulled out most of the. Actually, I did do a summary here. I forgot I did that. So a summary of those papers, which are lengthy enough, are included in your deck. So hopefully you get a chance to read those. Right, it's 20 past 8. I better move on. Oh yeah, application currency. Final piece to mention. There's different methodologies. FERPS as a FERPS plus kind of methodology. This is really a diagnostic, and today and all over the years, I've always had this view that we should be perpetually kind of analyzing the fitness of our technology, even if we're not doing big change and so on. The constant need to assess the fitness of our technologies in terms of usability, the reliability, performance, their supportability, and its functionality is important, because a lot of what I've talked about earlier on is functionality. So, the services required to deliver the business objectives, the strategic objectives. But there's more to it than that, and that's why FERPS plus or just FERPS is a good model that I don't see deployed robustly and persistently. But as a digital leader, isn't it very obvious that we should be asking ourselves to evaluate the currency or the fitness of our technologies today as we travel into tomorrow, and it shouldn't be just through a functionality lens, is I guess the point that I wanted to land. And then for those of you that want to get just stuck into the cloud and understanding what the cloud is and it's all its manifestations, a slide there where you can just think about what is the cloud. So the cloud is basically all technology ends up in some compute in chips, ultimately is stored in some databases, and that's all physical, and it needs to be housed somewhere. The cloud is the virtualization of servers, simplest way I can describe it. But of course, it manifested itself in not just the delivery of core computing capacity. Much of the services that we buy today are enabled in the cloud by packages such as Salesforce. So it's a CRM package, it's software as a service. You buy it, you don't install it on premise on your own servers. You can, but often we more and more see now that it's bought on a consumption basis. So again, Salesforce, Microsoft Dynamics, there's loads of tons and tons of different CRM that are out there, and it's the idea of you don't need to install it yourself, but you need to consume the service from a virtual environment. All sits in a data center somewhere. It could be in Ireland, could be anywhere. That's even an important determination for security and for regulatory management. So software as a service. There's also platform as a service, which is more about buying the infrastructure and storage space. And then there's pure infrastructure as a service, which is about buying racks and buying access to GPU, which is becoming more and more important. So Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, etc. They all do this. But the whole kind of the headline premise is cloud is the practice of using remote service hosted through the internet to store, manage, process, and secure both data, but also to consume services and consume applications. That's the headline for what cloud is, but you can of course get lost in that. And the final piece is, there's benefits of the cloud, very, very beneficial, but eyes wide open. It can present lots of cost challenges, lots of security challenges, and eyes wide open when it comes to cloud, the same way as eyes wide open when it comes to what applications offer. A slide there that you can read afterwards. But governance is critical. cost for particularly infrastructure services, if not measured and managed tightly, can be a challenge. You got to work out, you got to look at, sovereign data management. So we hear this whole idea now of sovereignty, which is making sure if you're utilizing cloud services, ultimately where the servers are, where the ultimately the cloud center is, because if that's sitting in an environment that you don't have legal control over, your data around your customers could be sitting in a country or legal environment that may not be very helpful if things go wrong. So really important considerations. And EU is a good environment and is getting stronger and better when it comes to kind of cloud reputation and cloud governance overall. Nader, how are you?
That's good. I believe you are meaning sovereign clouds here, right?
Yes, sovereign cloud. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely sovereign cloud.
This is a new trend in the whole world right now, especially after
Correct.
the critical situations across the globe. So everyone is keen about sovereign cloud now.
Everyone's trying to put a moat around their data. Nader is
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
That's really what's going on.
And in the Gulf region, because I'm working in UAE,
Okay.
so after the current unrest happened,
Yeah.
and what happened to AWS
Yep.
and Azure, so
Yep.
everyone is keen to return back to sovereign clouds and on-prem under his
Yep.
supervision and control.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Becoming a huge issue, but both for the regulatory factors, but I think definitely for in the world of greater conflict, Nader, it's becoming more important. You're touching on that and the unfortunate circumstances in the Middle East, but also because I mean, the Silk Road, and I mean, trade corridors, the global trade corridors, millennia ago, where they were power rested. If you think about today, technology services, particularly AI, as a lot of people trying to make sure they're putting their arms around their data, the AI services around that, because it's becoming more important now as a center of power and potential, and but also indeed risk as well, risk from attacks. So there's a big move around this. Nader, thanks for helping us double click on that. Very good. Okay, let's close out assignment 2. Just a couple of minutes to go. So just a reminder, 5 minutes, right? Just a reminder for us. What we're trying to do in assignment 2 is to develop a digital transformation roadmap. Okay, so what I shared on Saturday, and I'll share it again. I'm really keen for assignment 1. If you've done it, if you haven't, make sure you do it in assignment 2. We need to start off with our strategies. So really, let's think about anchoring our assignment 2 in our strategy is. Our strategy is a better experience for our customer. Our strategy is grow market share in a certain segment. Our strategy is to reduce cost and lead on efficiency. It's going to be something like that. So I need you to think about starting your assignment 2 with what is your strategy. Okay. And then when you've kind of defined and your strategy, you've already done in assignment 1, for all of them that I've got in, 1 or 2 I know which are late and are coming through, and we'll make sure that they're boxed off. You in assignment 1, you're assessing your first 7 core capabilities. And what no good number of you didn't do is you didn't say, here's our strategy, here's the capabilities that we need, and here's where we're good and here's where we're not so good. I think it's implicit in lots of the work that you did. Make it really explicit is what I'm maybe encouraging you to do, because I want you to carry that strategy through the 7 and down to the 10. So you'll do the first 7 that you've already done, and then I want you to do your assessment of how fit are you technologically. When we do our Saturday, how fit are we culturally? And when we do our final Tuesday on the 5th of May, how fit is our risk management of our digital plans. And ultimately, what I'll be asking you to do is set out your strategy, set out your assessment of your current fitness and your target fitness in order to execute your strategy. And in the middle, there will probably be some gaps. And on the roadmap, I want to see how you are plotting out executing closing those gaps, but also initiatives that will solve for your business strategy. Because as I said to you before, in the ambidextrous world, you're building new capability and executing it pretty much in flight. So your roadmap should show how you're building capability, how you're executing that capability to lead you and your organization, or you and your team, or you and your product, whatever lens you're looking through, towards successful strategic implementation. So the guidance there hopefully describes all that. And ultimately, what I want you to kind of end up with is you should have an executive cover note, say, here's the strategy, here's our assessment of the 10 vectors, the 7 capabilities and the 3 platforms, and to describe what your roadmap is. Simple 1,500 words. People have asked me on Saturday, and I'll kind of confirm that reuse, please, your existing analysis of the 7. Just make sure strategy is in front of it. Use the 7, add the 3, and then set out your roadmap. I'm really keen for you to use either the TMAP, which is this version, or do a linear version. I mean, I'd love you to see you using those. If you want to use another type of version, people have done that. Don't worry, I'm not going to negative mark if you don't use the templates that I've shared with you. But they are there as kind of good and best practice that you should be using. Use the right one for you. If you can use one of the 2 that I'm sharing, brilliant. If you want to use something else, just make sure that it helps to visualize what are the steps that are going to be necessary to, and this is one we did on Saturday, so you can look back on Saturday. I actually did one out on the call, on the session, set out, what initiatives, using what capability need to be moved forward in each one of the swim lanes, and then just try and identify the dependencies or the critical path items. So, for instance, on Saturday we were using the scenario, and we were saying that this organization needed to develop a youth proposition. So we said, well, for one of the first things they're going to do is commission some youth research. But one of the things we said is down here, I'm pointing my cursor to a squad, that they would probably need to set up a squad to do that youth research. Perhaps they don't have the internal capability to stand up that squad from all the internal teams. So therefore, they might need to buy in a digital proposition external team to fuse that squad to undertake that youth research. And then when they have that youth research is done, what they might do is then move forward to develop a youth app. I'm making it up here as we go along. Obviously you will anchor yours in your real life circumstances, but perhaps that youth app will need to be served by a Gen AI, by an LLM, because it might be an autonomous experience that we might want to generate. So that necessitates in the analytics swim lane the development of a Gen AI strategy. So hopefully you're getting a sense and the idea of what I want to do is just see big initiatives, milestones set out across a map like this, so I can see clarity around. You can share with me and the world that in order to execute your strategy, you know which initiatives and capabilities you need to build on and execute in order to ultimately reach your success, and that you've identified with some of this, with some of the linkages, clear dependencies and some clear critical paths. So that's in essence what I'm looking for. Cover note, which kind of summarizes all of that. The main body of work is, give me a roadmap. Probably give me, your 10 or 15. So I mean, one roadmap is fine on its own. That's the pass mark, right? If you want to go for push up for high scores and for distinction, give me a slide, on each, your assessment of each of your capabilities to show me that you have consumed, you understand, and you can apply what we're covering in this module, because really all I want to do is see your homework, right? The more homework you share with me and the more cogent that is, the more marks I will give you. And so you'll get a better outcome from an academic perspective. But actually, the more you dig into this and do it, even though it's extra work, the more you will learn about how to think about constructing these kind of roadmaps, understanding capability, and connecting them with value and ultimate strategy. So that's the kind of little recap that I wanted to do. They're the kind of the key components. The third thing that I want you to work on is give me a stakeholder communication plan, somewhere up to 5 slides. One of those should be, as most of you did in the first assignment, who are all your stakeholders and how you're going to manage them. But I want you to think about a couple of slides that will show me how you're going to communicate your strategy and your roadmap to your organization. So how you would actually, inspire, how would you motivate, almost like the investor presentation for your strategy, for your roadmap, and for the benefits that you wish to share. It's a level 9 program, folks. I can't give you any more than that because we're working at a fairly senior level. But hopefully that's useful to revisit. I'm happy to come around at it again and even do some worked examples when we do meet on the human aspect or the cultural aspect in a week and a half's time. But that's kind of what I wanted to share with you this evening. I've just about kept on time of 5 minutes over. I'm really sorry. So thank you for staying with me. I think that's the majority of our material done this evening. Oh yeah, you can just look at the back. I've given you the CB Insights 2026 trends for those of you who want to get stuck into technology trends. And then Are You Really a Digital Bank? It's a few years old now, but a really nice piece from Accenture. 10 questions to ask. Are you really a digital bank? Worth having a look at. And as I mentioned on Saturday, do please have a look at that. Says Andy Jassie's 2024 letter to shareholders. Forgive me, I thought I updated that. But Lorraine will have sent out a message to everybody. I'll update it in the slides and I'll repost them in IOB Learn. For the next Saturday, I'm going to send out Andy Jassie's 2025 letter to shareholders, and I'll ask you to read that in advance. Right, I've raced to the end. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. Any questions before we wrap?
Sorry, just one question if you wouldn't mind. And sorry, I missed
Please,
Saturday,
Margaret.
so sorry if you covered it already.
Hello.
Just to know if you're saying to reuse some of what we did for 1 already.
Yeah.
When would we have the feedback from 1? Just to know if you're on the right track of what we're reusing for 2.
Yeah, very good. I am I'm scheduled to have them all finished and back to IOB by the 26th of April, which is next week, isn't it? And the next week. So they'll be out with you a couple of days after that. What I was going to say, what I would say is the headline is that this kind of a pretty universal feedback for everybody, which is really nail the strategy at the start. Like we need to contextualize where you think you need to get and the gaps you need to solve based on the strategy you want to execute, Mark. So I think that would be the first thing I would say for that's kind of universally. If you've done it, brilliant. Haven't got to yours yet. Second thing I would say is have a think about prioritizing. So everyone's did a wonderful job, by the way. It's really good playbacks. Everyone's done a wonderful job of identifying all the things that they need to do. I'm kind of going to try and say to you that you really need to think about what are the smaller number of bigger things that need to be done and doing a little bit of prioritization. And then in most of the feedbacks, I'm going to be trying to, say to you, you probably need to be thinking about is the organization ready, or how do you get the organization ready? That'll come out in assignment 2 because we'll have done the cultural piece, but I'll probably have been pointing, because I didn't really see that coming through many of the assessments, about thinking about it did in some, but not in a lot, about, my God, the shift is big. How are we going to get the people ready? So they were the kind of 3 headlines, Margaret, if they make sense.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. Everybody else good?
All good.
All good. Gary, you're good? Yeah. Thanks, Brian. All good, Brian. Thank you. Yeah, great. All good. Okay. Going to call it. Thank you, Sarah. Very good. Call it a wrap for this evening. I'll update this slide and I'll upload them overnight, and we'll get the video out, and we'll see you in a week and a half. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a million.